Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're absolutely blowing the vault wide open on what is easily history's most famous archaeological horror story. We're heading back to the sands of Egypt, but we're stripping away all that sensationalism. We're strictly putting on our logical, evidence-based glasses to unmask the legendary curse of King Tutankhamun. If you're the kind of person who loves separating hard, cold facts from chilling fiction, well, you are in exactly the right place.
You know, our story kicks off with a genuinely terrifying hook. Picture this, it's 1923. Inside Cairo's Continental Hotel, Lord Carnarvon, a super wealthy British aristocrat, is thrashing in bed with a brutal fever. At exactly 1:55 a.m., he takes his last breath. And at that precise second, the power grid fails, plunging the entire city of Cairo into absolute darkness. And honestly, it gets even weirder, because thousands of miles away in England, Carnarvon's beloved dog suddenly starts howling into the night before dropping dead herself. All of this goes down just months after Carnarvon opened a 3,000-year-old tomb with a chilling warning attached. Death shall come on swift wings to whoever disturbs the peace of the pharaoh.
And it didn't stop there. Over the next 6 years, a staggering 22 people connected, either directly or indirectly, to the opening of that tomb, died under supposedly mysterious circumstances. We're talking sudden fevers, a radiologist passing away inexplicably, and even a secretary's 78-year-old father leaping from a 7th-floor apartment. No way, right? This completely sent the 1920s global media into an absolute frenzy. The whole world was entirely convinced that ancient, supernatural magic was actively hunting these people down.
Okay, let's dive into this and trace exactly how this hysteria built up. The tomb is discovered in November 1922 by the archaeologist Howard Carter. And almost immediately, the eeriness just kicks right in. Carter's pet golden canary is actually eaten inside its cage by a cobra, which, by the way, is a massive symbol of Egyptian royalty. Locals started whispering that it was the dead king's revenge. Fast forward to April 1923, and the expedition's main funder, Lord Carnarvon, is dead. By 1929, the body count of associated workers, officials, and family members hits 22.
And look, if that timeline wasn't enough to totally spook the public, the physical evidence seemed to basically seal the deal. When scientists finally performed an autopsy on the 3,000-year-old mummy in 1926, they made this haunting discovery. They found a circular mark right on the mummy's cheek. It was in the exact same spot where Lord Carnarvon had received the infected mosquito bite that eventually killed him. I mean, this sheer coincidence absolutely terrified the 1920s public. It convinced some really brilliant minds, even Sherlock Holmes creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, that an evil elemental curse was 100% real.
So we have to ask ourselves, was the curse actually real? When you stack up all those spooky coincidences, the blackout, the howling dog, the matching scars, it sounds like an airtight supernatural thriller. But what happens when we pivot sharply away from those sensational 1920s newspaper headlines and actually apply a logical, scientific, and historical investigation to these events? Let's break down the evidence.
Part 1, The Fragile Pharaoh. Let's look at biological reality versus the fearsome myth.
We really have to start our investigation with the supposed source of all this dark magic, the pharaoh himself. Pop culture loves to paint Tutankhamun as this ancient, powerful sorcerer reaching from beyond the grave. But modern scientific investigations, including DNA analysis and X-rays of the mummy, reveal something completely different. Tutankhamun was actually just an incredibly sickly, fragile teenager. Because royal inbreeding was super common back then, his parents were actually brother and sister, he suffered from some pretty severe genetic issues. He had a brutal club foot, which totally explains why over 130 walking sticks were found in his tomb. He literally couldn't walk without them. On top of that, he suffered from extreme pain due to Kohler's bone disease, and he had even contracted malaria. He tragically died around age 18 or 19. So he wasn't a dark wizard at all. He was just an incredibly ill kid whose body eventually gave out.
Part 2, Media Lies and Fabrications. Let's see how you go about inventing a curse. So if the pharaoh wasn't casting spells, where on earth did this terrifying curse originate? Well, the answer definitely doesn't lie in ancient Egyptian magic. It actually lies in the super aggressive, highly competitive 1920s newspaper industry. The true architects of this deadly curse were just eager reporters trying to sell copies. Think about the cornerstone of this whole myth. Newspapers at the time claimed Howard Carter found a clay tablet at the tomb's entrance with that chilling swift wings warning and then hid it so his workers wouldn't flee. The actual historical fact? That tablet never even existed. The warning was entirely made up. Decades later, the tomb's security guard, Richard Adamson, actually confessed that when a reporter asked if there were any curses, the team simply smiled and didn't deny it, just to keep nosy locals away. Literally from just a single smile, a reporter invented the most famous archaeological curse in history.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how easily basic facts completely dismantle the spookiest coincidences. Take the famous Cairo blackout right as Carnarvon died. Historians like Dr. Joyce Teldesley point out that rolling power cuts were incredibly common in the unstable 1920s Cairo power grid. It was purely a coincidence. And the dog dying at the exact same minute? Well, simple time zone math totally ruins that ghost story. You see, Carnarvon died at 1:55 a.m. Cairo time, which is midnight in the UK. The dog, Susie, died at 4 a.m. UK time. She died 4 hours later, not at the exact same moment.
Part 3. Science debunks the myth. Let's dig into the medical explanations.
Now that we know the media vastly exaggerated the events, we still need to address the actual body count. 22 people really did die, but to understand why, we need to turn to science. In 1963, a scientist at Cairo University, Dr. Ezzeddin Taha, examined archaeologists and museum employees, and he discovered a specific fungus inside these ancient tombs called Aspergillus niger. This stuff can survive for thousands of years, and it causes severe respiratory inflammation when breathed in. This perfectly explains the sudden fevers that some of the tomb workers developed. And the kicker? Dr. Taha noted this fungal infection could have been easily treated with standard antibiotics.
Which naturally brings us back to the most famous victim, Lord Carnarvon. The media, of course, claimed he was killed by the mummy's revenge, citing that matching scar on the cheek we talked about. But the historical fact is that the Morning Post newspaper, who, by the way, was locked out of exclusive tomb access, exaggerated that cheek scar just to sell competing papers. In reality, Carnarvon was already a frail, chronically ill man who had moved to Egypt specifically because he couldn't survive the harsh London winters. He accidentally sliced open a mosquito bite while shaving, a fly infected it, and remember, we're in 1923. Penicillin didn't even exist yet. A severe infection back then was simply a medical death sentence, not ancient magic.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Part 4, the statistical takedown. Using data as the ghost hunter. To really see if this curse holds up to an undeniable mathematical conclusion, we need to see if the tomb visitors actually died earlier than they should have. In 2002, the British Medical Journal put the curse to the ultimate statistical test. Researchers tracked down the lifespans of 44 Westerners who were in Egypt during the tomb's discovery. They broke them into two control groups, 25 people who physically stepped inside the tomb, and 19 who were in Egypt but stayed outside the tomb. And when they finally crunched the numbers, there was absolutely zero significant difference in the age of death between the two groups. Being inside the tomb didn't shorten anyone's lifespan whatsoever.
So, the crucial point is the number 73. Famed investigator James Randi took a hard look at the data of those who were supposedly cursed and calculated their average age of death. They lived, on average, to the ripe old age of 73 years. That was actually slightly higher than the life expectancy for their social class at the time. Honestly, if the pharaoh was cursing people, he was ironically helping them live longer.
Part 5. The Ultimate Survivors. Target number 1.
To really put the final nail in the coffin of this myth, consider this. If supernatural magic were truly protecting this tomb, logic dictates that the people who violated it the absolute most should have suffered the absolute worst fates, right? Well, let's see what happened to them. Lady Evelyn, Lord Carnarvon's daughter, was one of the very first people to physically enter the tomb. She didn't drop dead. She lived to be 78 years old, passing away in 1980. How about Dr. Douglas Derry? He is the man who literally took a scalpel and cut into the mummy to perform the autopsy. If anyone on Earth deserved the mummy's wrath, it was for sure him. But he lived to the age of 87, dying in 1961. They completely, utterly defied that sensational media narrative.
And this brilliantly illustrates the final collapse of the entire curse theory. Let's look at target number 1, Howard Carter. He was the man who dedicated his entire life to finding the tomb, broke down the sealed door, physically removed the treasures, and hoisted the pharaoh out of his resting place. If there was a curse, he should have been struck down immediately. Instead, Carter lived for 16 more years after the discovery, finally passing away from natural causes at age 64 in 1939.
Carter was constantly harassed by eager reporters asking him all about his impending doom and the supernatural forces supposedly hunting him. His matter-of-fact, brilliant response to the press was always, simply, "I am still alive." He knew it was all just media spin from the very start.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely beautiful thought. You see, the ancient Egyptians didn't actually believe a tomb raid was the ultimate end. They believed that a person only truly dies when their name is spoken for the very last time. For 3,000 years, Tutankhamun's successors had essentially erased him from history. He was entirely forgotten.
But when Howard Carter cleared away that sand in 1922, he didn't unleash a curse. By bringing his name back to the world, Carter actually gave a fragile, forgotten boy king the eternal life he was promised. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always look past the flashy headlines and follow the evidence.